First contact with the feast. The orbital research station Helios hung in the violet skies of Proxima, its solar panels gleaming like diamond facets in the red dwarf's light. Inside, Dr. Sarah Chen stared through the observation window at the planet's surface, her breath fogging the reinforced glass. The world below was a masterpiece of evolution's artistry. Towering purple vegetation, crystalline formations that seemed to pulse with inner light, and vast plains of what appeared to be living metal. But it wasn't the alien landscape that held her attention. It was the creatures that the local sentient species, the Verkarian, called the shadow moss. Even from orbit, she could see their massive forms moving through the crystalline forests, each one easily the size of an earth elephant. The Verkarian lived in fear of these apex predators, which had evolved natural stealth technology and could literally bend light around their bodies. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this," called out Marcus Rodriguez, the station's xenobiologist. He was hunched over his workstation, surrounded by holographic readouts of genetic sequences and chemical compounds. "The tissue samples from the shadow maw we found. They're showing some fascinating properties." Sarah moved away from the window, her magnetized boots clicking against the metal floor. The research station had been studying the shadow moss for months now, ever since first contact with the Verkarian. The aliens had been baffled by humanity's interest in their planet's most feared predator. "What kind of properties?" she asked, leaning over Marcus's shoulder to examine the data. "Well, for one thing," Marcus said, highlighting a particular sequence, "their muscle tissue is remarkably similar to Earth's Wagyu beef in terms of marbling and protein structure. And these compounds here," he pointed to another readout, "they're basically natural flavor enhancers." Sarah's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "Yeah," Marcus grinned. "We might have just discovered the most delicious apex predator in the known galaxy." The discovery spread through the station like wildfire. Within hours, the station's chef, a former five-star restaurant owner named James Wong, was practically begging for a sample to work with. The Verkarian observers on board watched in horror as humans excitedly discussed cooking techniques and potential recipes for their planet's most feared predator. The first official tasting was conducted 2 weeks later. A hunting party, led by professional big game hunter Maria Gonzalez, had managed to bring down a juvenile shadow maw using a combination of thermal imaging and specialized EMP weapons that disrupted its stealth capabilities. The creature's meat, properly prepared by Chef Wong, turned out to be everything the initial analysis had suggested and more. "This is incredible," Sarah mumbled around a perfectly seared piece of shadow maw steak. "The texture is like butter, but the flavor, it's like the best beef you've ever had, mixed with truffles and something entirely alien but wonderful." The Verkarian ambassador, Telkar, watched the humans feast with a mixture of horror and fascination. His species had evolved as gatherers, developing advanced technology to protect themselves from predators rather than hunting them. The very idea of eating a shadow maw was beyond comprehension. "You enjoy consuming the flesh of death itself?" Telkar asked, his crystalline appendages trembling slightly. Sarah wiped her mouth with a napkin and turned to the ambassador. "Telkar, humans have a long history of turning feared predators into delicacies. On Earth, we eat sharks, lions, alligators. It's part of our nature to conquer our fears by quite literally consuming them. But the shadow moss, they are terror incarnate," Telkar protested. "They have hunted our kind since before we learned to build cities. They can disappear at will, move without sound, and their claws can cut through our strongest materials." "Exactly," Maria chimed in, her eyes gleaming with the excitement of a hunter who had found new challenging prey. "And now we know they're delicious too. This changes everything." And indeed it did. As news of the discovery made its way back to Earth, humanity's culinary and hunting communities went into a frenzy. The possibility of sustainably hunting and harvesting what was quickly being called space Wagyu opened up new diplomatic and economic opportunities between humans and the Verkarian. The humans' apparent fearlessness and their ability to turn the galaxy's most efficient predator into a gourmet meal caused a fundamental shift in how the Virkarian viewed their new allies. These strange beings who could look at a shadow maw and see not death, but dinner, were either completely insane or possessed of a courage that bordered on the divine. As Sarah watched the reactions unfold, she couldn't help but smile. Once again, humanity's unique combination of curiosity, adaptability, and slightly insane courage had turned a potentially terrifying first-contact situation into something unexpectedly positive. Though she suspected the Virkarian would need quite some time to adjust to the idea of shadow maw steak being a delicacy. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story? The cultural clash. The Virkarian High Council chamber buzzed with agitated energy as crystalline councilors shifted and chimed in their floating seats. Holographic displays showed scenes that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Humans in specialized hunting gear tracking shadow maws through the crystal forests, setting up elaborate traps, and most disturbing of all, organizing what they called safari tours. Ambassador Telkar stood before the council, his crystalline form refracting anxiety in rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. The humans have established 3 hunting lodges in the Northern Territories, he reported. They're calling it sustainable predator management and culinary tourism. This is madness, declared Council Elder Zixtal, her ancient crystal structure crackling with disapproval. They treat our greatest terror as if it were entertainment. The chamber's main display switched to a live feed from one of the hunting lodges. Dr. Sarah Chen was giving a presentation to a mixed group of humans and Virkarian about shadow maw behavior patterns. Behind her, Chef Wong was demonstrating various cooking techniques, while Maria Gonzalez cleaned her specialized hunting equipment. Their fearlessness defies all logical analysis, observed council scientist Venpour. We've documented 17 different hunting techniques they've developed in just 3 months. They're using the shadow maw's own stealth capabilities against them. The feed showed Maria explaining the latest innovation, a fine mesh of sensors that detected the slight gravitational distortion caused by a shadow maw's light-bending abilities. When combined with thermal imaging and motion tracking, it made the previously invisible predators stand out like beacons to human hunters. But what truly disturbs me, Telkar continued, is how they've begun influencing our younger generation. The display shifted to show a group of young Virkarian, their crystal structures still soft and growing, eagerly watching human hunters prepare their gear. Some were even attempting to handle the specialized equipment themselves, their natural crystalline appendages adapting to grip the alien tools. They call it cultural exchange, Telkar explained. The humans teach hunting and cooking, while our young ones teach them about our crystal crafting and sonic architecture. They're even developing hybrid technologies. The council chamber erupted in a cascade of chiming voices. The idea of their youth embracing the hunting of shadow maws was unprecedented. For millennia, their species had developed increasingly sophisticated ways to hide from and defend against these predators. The humans' approach of active engagement was causing a seismic shift in their cultural foundations. Meanwhile, at the hunting lodge, Sarah was concluding her presentation when an alert sounded. The lodge's sensors had detected a massive shadow maw approaching the perimeter. Instead of activating the defensive shields, as the Virkarian would have done, the humans burst into excited activity. "That's the big male we've been tracking," Maria announced, quickly checking her gear. "The one with the unique stealth pattern. We've been calling him Ghost." The young Virkarian observers vibrated with a mixture of terror and fascination as the humans efficiently organized themselves for a hunt. Years of evolution and cultural conditioning screamed at them to hide, to activate their personal shields, to do anything but move toward a shadow maw. "Would any of you like to observe from the safe room?" Sarah offered, knowing how difficult this was for their alien friends. To her surprise, 3 of the young Virkarian moved forward. "We wish to understand," said the bravest of the 3, their crystal structure pulsing with nervous energy. "How can you face death with such excitement?" Maria smiled as she handed them each a sensor pad. Death? No, friend. This isn't about death. This is about life, about understanding these magnificent creatures, about respecting their strength while proving our own. And yes, ultimately about creating something wonderful from that understanding. The young Viracarian looked at each other, their crystal structures synchronizing in a way that indicated deep thought. Humans were teaching them something their species had never considered. That fear could be overcome not just through defense and avoidance, but through engagement and understanding. Back in the council chamber, the debate raged on. Some argued for restricting human hunting activities, fearing the cultural contamination. Others pointed out the undeniable benefits. Shadow Maw attacks on Viracarian settlements had decreased significantly since the humans began their hunting programs, and the economic opportunities from what humans called space wagyu were substantial. Perhaps, suggested a younger council member, their crystal structure still showing traces of growth patterns, we should consider that our fear of shadow moths has limited us. The humans don't just hunt them, they study them, understand them, respect them even as they consume them. It's a completely different relationship with nature than what we've developed. The chamber fell silent, the weight of potential cultural change hanging heavy in the air. Outside, another hunting party was preparing to depart, and for the first time in Viracarian history, it would include not just human hunters, but a small group of young Viracarian observers, eager to learn a new way of facing their ancient fears. Hunter becomes hunted. The morning mist swirled through the crystal forest, refracting light in dazzling patterns. Maria Gonzalez crouched behind a formation of living crystal, her advanced sensor suite quietly tracking multiple signatures. Behind her, 3 young Viracarian observers hovered silently, their crystalline forms dimmed to minimize reflection. There's something different about their behavior, Maria whispered into her comm unit. Sarah, are you seeing this? Back at the research station, Dr. Sarah Chen studied the incoming data with growing fascination. The Shadow Maw pack was moving in an entirely new pattern, one that suggested intelligence far beyond their initial assessments. They're adapting to our hunting techniques, Sarah replied, her fingers flying over holographic displays. Look at how they're using the crystal formations to scatter our sensor readings. They're learning. The discovery sent ripples through both human and Viracarian communities. What had started as a hunting program had evolved into something far more complex. The Shadow Maws weren't just prey. They were proving to be worthy adversaries capable of strategic thinking. Chef Wong, who had been developing new recipes in the station's kitchen, joined Sarah at her workstation. So these creatures aren't just delicious. They're brilliant too. Fascinating. In my experience, the smartest animals often provide the most interesting culinary challenges. A week later, a joint human-Viracarian research team made another startling discovery. The Shadow Maws weren't just adapting their hunting patterns, they were actively studying human settlements. Security footage showed them testing defenses, analyzing patrol patterns, and even attempting to understand human technology. It's like they've recognized us as equals in some sort of evolutionary arms race, Sarah explained to a packed conference room. Every time we develop a new tracking method, they find a way to counter it. They're pushing us to innovate, and we're pushing them to evolve. The situation reached a turning point during what was supposed to be a routine hunting expedition. Maria's team, now including several trained Viracarian hunters, found themselves surrounded by a coordinated group of Shadow Maws. The predators had learned to use their stealth abilities in concert, creating overlapping fields of distortion that confused even the most advanced sensors. They've turned our own tactics against us, Maria realized, a note of admiration in her voice. They watched us hunt in teams, and now they're doing the same. The hunting party was forced to retreat, but not before capturing extensive data on this new behavior. When they reviewed the footage back at the station, even the skeptical Viracarian council members were impressed. These creatures, Elder Zixtal admitted, they are not just beasts to be feared or hunted. They are worthy of study, of understanding. The incident led to a fundamental shift in the human approach. While hunting continued, the demand for shadow maw meat had only grown with its increasing rarity and the challenge involved in obtaining it. The focus expanded to include research, observation, and what Sarah called evolutionary diplomacy. Research stations began documenting complex social behaviors among the shadow moths. They observed elaborate courtship rituals, teaching behaviors between adults and juveniles, and even what appeared to be strategic planning sessions before hunts. The more humans learned, the more fascinating these creatures became. "We're not just hunting them anymore," Sarah explained to a group of Earth journalists. "We're engaging in a complex dance of predator and prey, where both sides are constantly learning and adapting. It's pushing the boundaries of our understanding of alien intelligence." The Vircarian, watching this evolution with growing interest, began contributing their own unique insights. Their centuries of observation, previously focused solely on defense, provided valuable data about shadow maw behavior patterns. When combined with human hunting expertise and scientific analysis, it created a revolutionary new understanding of predator-prey relationships. "Our ancestors would never believe this," a young Vircarian hunter named Kexley remarked while cleaning their newly modified hunting gear. "We feared them for so long, we never stopped to truly see them." The hunting lodges gradually transformed into research centers that also happened to provide exclusive culinary experiences. Tourists from Earth now came not just to hunt, but to observe, study, and understand these remarkable creatures. The shadow maw meat served in the lodge's restaurants became even more precious, not just for its taste, but for the story each dish represented. A story of respect, adaptation, and mutual evolution. Maria, leading a training session for new hunters, summed it up best. "We came here thinking we'd found the ultimate prey. Instead, we found teachers. Every hunt is a lesson in humility, adaptation, and the endless dance between hunter and hunted. And somehow, that makes the feast at the end even more meaningful." Diplomatic delicacies. The grand reception hall of the Vircarian High Council had never seen anything quite like this before. Crystal tables sparkled under the purple light of Proxima, laden with an unprecedented fusion of Earth and Vircarian cuisine. At the center of each table, expertly prepared shadow maw dishes drew gasps of both horror and curiosity from the assembled diplomatic courts. Chef James Wong stood proudly beside his masterpiece. Shadow maw prepared 5 ways, each dish incorporating traditional Vircarian crystal spices that complemented the meat's unique properties. The combination had taken months to perfect, requiring close collaboration with Vircarian nutritionists to ensure the dishes would be safe and palatable for both species. The secret, Wong explained to an attentive audience of human and Vircarian diplomats, was understanding how the shadow maw's stealth mechanism affects their muscle tissue. The same proteins that bend light around their bodies create these incredible, shifting flavors when properly prepared. Ambassador Telkar, who had once watched in horror as humans first consumed shadow maw meat, now stood at the head table, preparing to take his first bite. The entire hall fell silent. This moment represented more than just a meal. It was a symbolic breaking down of millennia-old barriers of fear and tradition. To new understandings, Telkar announced, raising the morsel with a crystalline appendage. The gathered crowd watched as he consumed it, his crystal structure briefly pulsing with unexpected pleasure. "This is remarkable." The success of the diplomatic dinner sparked a revolution in interspecies cuisine. Restaurants across human space began featuring shadow maw dishes, while Vircarian establishments experimented with Earth cooking techniques. Trading agreements were signed, cultural exchange programs established, and a whole new industry emerged around what the media dubbed apex gastronomy. But not everyone was pleased with these developments. A group of conservative Vircarian elders protested what they saw as the degradation of their traditional values. Meanwhile, some human environmental groups raised concerns about the sustainability of shadow maw hunting. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself addressing these concerns at a joint species conference, We've actually seen remarkable improvements in the overall ecosystem since implementing managed hunting programs, she explained, pointing to detailed ecological surveys. The shadow moths have become more selective in their own hunting, showing increased intelligence and adaptation. They're no longer just apex predators. They're active participants in their environment's evolution. The conference room's displays showed footage of recent shadow moth behavior, coordinated hunting parties using sophisticated strategies, complex social interactions, and even what appeared to be intentional communication with human hunting groups. In some regions, a strange sort of mutual respect had developed between human hunters and shadow moth packs. Maria Gonzalez, now heading the Interspecies Hunting Authority, shared her own observations. We're seeing something unprecedented. The shadow moths seem to understand the concept of sustainable hunting. They're allowing us to take certain members of their packs, usually older or injured individuals, while fiercely protecting others. It's as if they've accepted us as part of their ecological cycle. This revelation led to new diplomatic initiatives. The Virkarian High Council, inspired by the success of the hunting programs, began reconsidering their species' traditional defensive stance toward their environment. Young Virkarians, especially those who had trained with human hunters, were at the forefront of this cultural shift. Our ancestors built walls to hide from the shadow moths, declared Kexley, now a prominent voice in Virkarian politics. The humans taught us to build bridges instead. Through understanding our predators, we've gained a deeper understanding of ourselves. The impact extended beyond just hunting and cuisine. Human-Virkarian cooperation led to technological breakthroughs based on shadow moth biology. The predator's stealth mechanism inspired new developments in light-bending technology, while their social structures provided insights into complex system organization. Chef Wong, overseeing the opening of another fusion restaurant, reflected on the unexpected consequences of that first shadow moth tasting. Food has always been a bridge between cultures, he said, carefully plating a dish that combined shadow moth meat with traditional Virkarian crystal fruits. But this is the first time it's helped bridge the gap between entire species. The diplomatic success of what became known as predator gastronomy caught the attention of other spacefaring races. Delegations arrived from across known space, eager to learn from the human Virkarian example. Each brought their own culinary traditions and hunting practices, adding new layers to the evolving relationship between predator and prey, hunter and hunted. We've created something entirely new here, Sarah observed during a quiet moment in her lab, watching as a shadow moth pack moved through the crystal forest below. Not just new cuisine or new hunting techniques, but a new way of thinking about our place in the galaxy. Sometimes the best way to overcome your fears is to sit down and have dinner with them. Apex adaptation. 5 years after humans first tasted shadow moth meat, the crystal forests of Proxima had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The morning light filtered through the towering crystals, illuminating a scene that would have been unthinkable half a decade ago. A mixed group of human and Virkarian researchers tracking the shadow moth pack, not to hunt them, but to continue what had become the most fascinating xenobiological study in human history. Dr. Sarah Chen, her hair now streaked with gray from years of field research, adjusted her advanced sensor suite as she recorded the pack's behavior. Beside her, a young Virkarian named Kexley used their crystalline appendages to take readings of the surrounding environment. "They're doing it again," Sarah whispered, excitement evident in her voice. "Watch their stealth patterns." The shadow moths were using their light-bending abilities in ways never seen before. Instead of simply cloaking themselves, they were creating complex patterns of visible and invisible sections, almost like a form of communication. More remarkably, they seemed to be deliberately performing these displays for their observers. "It's like they're teaching us," Kexley observed, their crystal structure pulsing with academic excitement. "Just as we studied them, they've been studying us." Back at the main research facility, which had evolved from the original hunting lodge, Chef James Wong was working with a team of xenobiologists to understand these new developments. The shadow moth's changing behavior had affected their meat's properties, creating new flavors and textures that defied conventional culinary science. Every time we think we understand them, they surprise us, Wang said, examining cellular structure readings from recent samples. Their tissue is adapting, becoming more complex. It's as if they're evolving in response to our interest in them. Maria Gonzalez, who had transitioned from master hunter to lead researcher in shadow moth behavior studies, presented their latest findings to a joint human-Vircarian scientific council. The holographic displays showed clear evidence of accelerated evolution in both shadow moth physical capabilities and social structures. They're not just prey animals anymore, Maria explained, pointing to comparative brain scans. They've developed problem-solving abilities that rival those of Earth's most intelligent species. Some younger specimens are even attempting to mimic human and Vircarian vocalizations. The implications were staggering. What had begun as a simple hunting program had catalyzed an unprecedented evolutionary leap. The shadow moths, faced with human ingenuity and Vircarian technology, had adapted not by becoming better at hiding or fighting, but by becoming smarter, more social, and more engaged with their hunters. The Vircarian High Council, once terrified of these creatures, now found themselves facing an entirely new paradigm. The very predators they had feared for millennia were showing signs of nascent sapience. This development forced both humans and Vircarians to reconsider their relationship with these remarkable beings. Perhaps, Ambassador Telkar suggested during an emergency session, we should consider establishing protected zones where no hunting is allowed, areas where we can observe their continued development. The suggestion was quickly adopted, leading to the creation of vast preserves within the crystal forests. Hunting continued in designated areas, but with new restrictions and ethical guidelines. The shadow moths, displaying their evolving intelligence, seemed to understand and respect these boundaries. Chef Wang's restaurants adapted as well, transforming into cultural centers where the art of preparing shadow moth meat became intertwined with education about these fascinating creatures. Each dish now came with information about the specific pack it came from, their behaviors, and their contributions to scientific understanding. We're not just serving food anymore, Wang explained to a documentary crew. We're serving history, science, and the story of three species learning to coexist in ways no one thought possible. The most remarkable changes came from the youngest generation of both humans and Vircarians. Children born after first contact grew up viewing shadow moths not as terrifying monsters or mere prey, but as intelligent co-inhabitants of their world. Some even developed limited forms of communication with juvenile shadow moths, leading to breakthrough insights into their cognitive capabilities. Sarah, watching a group of children interacting with young shadow moths through a protective barrier, reflected on how far they'd come. When we first arrived, we thought we were just discovering a new food source. Instead, we found partners in evolution. The shadow moths have changed us as much as we've changed them. As if to emphasize her point, a massive shadow moth emerged from the crystal forest nearby. Instead of attacking or hiding, it performed a complex series of light-bending displays, creating beautiful patterns that reflected off the surrounding crystals. The children, both human and Vircarian, responded with their own signals, using modified versions of shadow moth stealth technology. "This is the real feast," Maria said, standing beside Sarah. "Not the meat we eat, but the knowledge we've gained, the boundaries we've crossed, the fears we've overcome. We came looking for prey and found teachers instead." The sun set over Proxima, its red light creating spectacular refractions through the crystal forest. In the gathering dusk, humans, Vircarians, and shadow moths moved through their shared environment, each species changed by their encounter with the others, each one adapting, learning, and growing in ways that continued to astonish and inspire. The story of humanity's greatest meal had become something far more significant, a testament to the endless possibilities that arise when different species choose to learn from each other rather than fear each other. And somewhere in the crystal forests, a new generation of shadow moths was growing up. their evolution guided by their interactions with beings who had transformed from predators into partners.